Jai Hind students, let us just discuss Unit 3 with this video. In this video, we are going to discuss about the Indian Contract Act. I will cover few important topics related with the Indian Contract Act. Let us first start with the meaning of the contract. There are two terms that we always used to just heard when we talk about the Indian Contract Act, that is agreement and contract. So the terms are very important to understand when we talk about the agreements. All agreements are not called as the contracts because agreements are of two types. There may be social agreements, there may be legal agreements. Only the legal agreements can be called as the contracts. Social agreements cannot be called as the contracts because in the case of the legal agreements, there is a legal intention of the party to constitute or to bind each other. So that's why the legal agreements are called as the contracts. But in case of social agreements, it's a mere social arrangement. It's a mere domestic talk, domestic arrangement that is going on in between the parties. There is no legal intention of the parties to bind each other according to law. So that's why they are only called as the social agreements. They are not the legal agreements. So legal agreements can be called as the contracts. Social agreements cannot be called as the contracts, and that's why it is a proper maxim that is into the use under the Indian Contract Act. It says that all agreements are not contracts, but all contracts are agreements. To be a contract, first there should be an agreement, and then there should be enforceability by law, then only it becomes the contract. So we can say that all agreements are not contracts, but all contracts are agreements. Social agreements, when we talk, like if somebody A invites B to a dinner and B accepts the invitation, it is just a social agreement. There is no legal intention of A and B to just bind each other in the code or in the law, according to law. So that's why these are the mere talks, mere day-to-day domestic arrangements in between two person, and that are the social agreements. They are only the social agreement. They cannot be called as the contracts. To be a contract, the parties must, one party should offer to the other party something, and the other party should accept that offer, and both of the parties must have the intention to create legal relationship. They must have the intention to bound each other by law. Then only it becomes the legal agreement. So that is a difference in between the social agreements and the legal agreements. To be a contract, like offer plus proposal plus intention to create legal relationship, all three elements are important. So that's why all agreements cannot be called as the contracts, but all contracts can be called as the agreements. There is a leading case when we go with this kind of the maxim, all agreements are not contract. The leading case is of Mr. Belfer versus Mrs. Belfer. Mr. Belfer got a job in Ceylon, and he said to his wife that okay, his wife was not fine at that time, was not well. So he said ki okay, I will just send you some money for your day to day use, and you may use that money, and then once you will feel okay, you may come to my place. So that was a kind of agreement in between the husband and the wife, and but there was no legal intention of both of the husband and wife to bind each other. That was just mere domestic talk. They discussed that. So now Mr. Belfer, he went to Ceylon for his job, and after a few years, like after a few months, he stopped sending the money to Mrs. Belfer, and then Mrs. Belfer went to the court. She claimed into the court that Mr. Belfer is not paying any kind of the money for day-to-day living, and in that case the court gave the decision in the favor of Mr. Belfer. The court said that while there was a agreement in between Mr. Belfer and Mrs. Belfer, there was no legal intention of the parties. Both of the parties didn't bind each other through any kind of the law or something like that. So it was just a mere domestic arrangement in between husband and wife, and that's why it is not a contract, and Mr. Belfer is not responsible now, and he is not required to pay any money to Mrs. Belfer. So with that case, it was proved that the mere domestic social arrangements, they do not constitute contract. To constitute a contract, there must be a arrangement like in the form of offer plus proposal, and there must be legal intention of the parties to come into a contract. Then only it becomes a legal agreement. So this is the case that just explains this important maxim, that is, all agreements are not contracts. There is a difference in between the agreement and the contract. In agreement there are only two important elements, offer plus acceptance, but in contract it is like constituted of three important elements, offer, acceptance and its enforceability. In the case of the agreement, there is no legal obligation of both of the parties to perform their duties, but in contract both of the parties are legally bound to complete whatever they have promised. In the case of agreement, agreements cannot be called as the contracts, because all the agreements may include the social agreements and the legal agreements. So social agreements are not legally binding, and that's why they do not come under the definition of the contract. But in case of contracts, all contracts are agreements. To be a contract, first it has to be agreement, and then legal enforceability is required. So that's why all contracts are called as the agreements. Agreement is not a concluded or a binding contract. Agreement do not bind the parties, so that's why agreement is not concluded or a binding contract. But in case of a contract, both of the parties legally bound each other. So all these are the main differences in between the agreement and the contract. To be a valid contract, as per section 10 of the Indian Contract Act 1872, there are a lot of the essential elements that belongs to a valid contract. Number one is offer and acceptance. First, there should be a proposal by one party to do something, and then there must be acceptance by the other party to perform that role. So that is why offer and acceptance is the first important element to constitute a valid contract. Then both of the parties must have the intention to create legal relationship. For example, A says to B, would you like to purchase my car? That is a proposal. And B says that, okay, I do accept, I will pay you the money that you are demanding, that is 5 lakh. So it is a kind of an offer and acceptance, and both of the parties have signed some kind of a deal. So there is an intention of both of the parties to create a legal relationship. Then only it becomes a valid contract. A says to B, if you will not pay me the money properly within the time, I will sue you in the court. And B also has that intention that he will give me if he will not give me the delivery of the car within the specified time, I will sue him in the court. So both of the parties have the intention to create the legal relationship. That is also very important to constitute a valid contract. Then the contract should be in the written form. It is okay always. It creates evidence. So it should be properly dated. There should be a proper paperwork that should be done. So legal formalities must also be completed to constitute a valid contract. Like contracts must be enforceable by law. It should not be any act that is forbidden by law. For example, somebody says let's go for murder of somebody, stealing of something. So these are the contracts which are illegal, which are forbidden by law. So that kind of the contracts cannot be called as the valid contracts. So the contract, again, like the another element to constitute a valid contract is the possibility of the performance. The contract should be possible to perform. It should not be like that somebody says to just plug the stars for me from the sky, and B says okay, let me do that. So it is impossible to complete this kind of the transaction. So that's why the offer and the acceptance that the parties are agreeing to, they should be possible to perform. This is also very important to constitute a valid contract. Then agreement should not be expressly declared void. For example, like if there is something, A claims something which is not possible, so that kind of the agreements are expressly declared as void. A says to B, I will give you my bike, come to my home in the evening at 5, and I will give you my bike at the rate of rupees 35,000. B agreed to that, but at the time when they were making the contract, the bike was destroyed by somebody. So that means ki now the subject matter is not into the existence. So this kind of the contracts becomes void. There was no fault of any party into it, but since the subject matter is not available now, so that's why the agreement is now void. And then when we talk about the agreements not expressly declared void, there are certain agreements that comes under this category. The agreement, void agreement, when we go with the kind of the void agreement, the agreements which are illegal, they are also void. Agreements in restraint of trade, marriage, legal agreements, legal proceedings, they are called as the void agreements. Like someone cannot restrain other one to do any kind of the legal trade. Somebody cannot restrain the other party to go for a marriage or to go for a legal proceedings. These agreements as per the Indian Contract Act are called as the void agreements. So agreement should not be expressly declared as void. That is also one of the important essential element. Then certainty of the terms. A demands to be, I need 100 tons of oil, but didn't specify that what kind of oil. Is it the coconut oil? Is it the like kerosene oil? Is it the mustard oil? What kind of oil actually he is demanding, he is actually talking about. So there must be certainty into the terms of the agreement, in terms of the contract, that only it becomes a valid contract. Then there should be the lawful objective. The objective should not be illegal, like somebody says you just go for the murder of B, I will pay you 1 lakh. So this is not the lawful objective. So to constitute a valid contract, there must be the lawful object, and there must be lawful consideration also. Like lawful consideration in the sense, like if somebody says to A says to B ki okay, if you just go for this kind of the thing for me, if you will bring this for me, I will just give you the smuggling biscuits. So this is no lawful consideration. So there must be lawful consideration. The parties must be able to do the contract. There must be the capacity of the parties to do the contract. The minors are the kind of the people, those who as per the Indian Contract Act are not capable to do the contract. The kind of the people, those who are of unsound mind. And again there are certain persons, those who are disqualified by the court to do the contract. So these three kind of the categories or the people that comes into these categories, they are not able to do the contract. So contract, to be a valid contract, the parties must have the capacity to do the contract. And at last, free consent. Like to constitute a valid contract, there must be free consent of both of the parties. It is the consent should not be constituted of any kind of the coercion, undue influence, fraud, mistake or misrepresentation. So to constitute a valid contract, there must be free consent by both of the parties that should be given. Then only it can become a valid contract. Then there may be various kinds of the contract. It may be valid, void, voidable, illegal, unenforceable. Valid contract, as we discussed, all the essential elements of a contract must be there to make it valid. Void contract means like the kind of the contracts, if the subject matter has been destroyed, the contract will become void. And again there are certain agreements which are expressly declared as void. Agreement in restraint of marriage, trade, legal proceedings, they are considered as void contracts. Voidable means in which there is no free consent. Like if the contract is based on coercion, somebody has compelled somebody on the gunpoint to transfer the property, so that there is no free consent of the party into it, and this kind of the contract is not because of the free consent, and that's why it is a voidable contract. So for voidable contract, it is directly connected with the concept of the free consent. So there must be free consent if you want the contract not to be voidable. Then illegal agreements are the kind of the agreements which are forbidden by law, and there are certain agreements which are unenforceable, which are again as per the court you cannot go for these kind of the contracts. So they may be called as the unenforceable contracts. Like if there is any technical defect in the contract, for example there is some problem in printing error, writing or something like that, so these kind of the contracts are unenforceable as per law. Then there may be express contracts in which both of the parties by words, either spoken or written, has expressed their offer and as well as the acceptance. So these kind of the contracts are called as express contracts. Implied contracts means like in which there was no express intention of the parties, but still the contract has come into the picture. For example, A delivers by mistake goods to B's warehouse instead of at C's place. Here there is an obligation on the part of B to return the goods to A, though they never intended to enter into a contract. It is a implied contract. It is very much implied that if he has done something by mistake, so the other one should just give that goods back to the person who is to whom that goods actually belongs. Then there may be tacit contract, like the contract which is inferred by the conduct of the parties, obtaining cash through ATM, sale by fall of hammer, they may all be called as the tacit contracts. Tacit contracts are one kind of the implied contracts. Then quasi contract. Quasi contract rests on the like one of the maxim that no one can enrich himself at the expense of the another person. They are not the actual contracts, but it resembles to a contract. It is created by law under certain circumstances. The law creates and enforces legal rights and obligations when no real contract exists in between the parties. So we will discuss it in detail in our next slides. Then there may be the contracts which may be categorized on the basis of the performation. Executed, in which both of the parties have performed their duties. Executory, in which both of the party have to perform their duties now. Unilateral, in which one of the party has performed his promise, the other one is required to perform it now, so that is unilateral. Bilateral are again the executory contracts in which both of the parties are they have to just complete their duty, like the promise in a contract is outstanding on the part of the both of the parties, so it is known as the bilateral contract. So there may be various types of the contracts. Then one important term that comes under the Indian Contract Act is called as the consideration. Consideration, for consideration, it is means something in return. So in legal law or in legal dictionary, there is a word which is used for this term consideration. It is called as quid pro quo. That means there must be something in return. So to constitute a valid contract, there must be something in return. There must be consideration that should be available to both of the parties. Then only the contract can be successful. In law, there is a maxim: no consideration, no contract. For example, like Mr. A is completing his promise, so there must be something in return for that promise from Mr. B. So if Mr. B is not doing anything for Mr. A, so it seems that there is no consideration in the contract from the one party to the other party, and then the contract will become void. So that's why the rule no consideration, no contract says that both of the parties are under the obligation to do something for the other party. So there must be consideration for both of the parties, then only the contract becomes legal and valid. Otherwise the contract may be called as like unenforceable. So that's, but there are certain exceptions to the rule of the no consideration, no contract. The first exception is love and affection. For example, an elder brother, on account of natural love and affection, promised to pay the debts of his younger brother. The agreement was put to writing and was registered, held the agreement was valid. Similarly, compensation for voluntary service, like if anybody want to just give any voluntary service to somebody else without charging for that particular service or for that particular promise, so in that case again the maxim no consideration, no contract will not be applicable and the contract will be valid. Promise to pay a time bearer debt. Time bearer debt are covered by Limitation Act, that says that to claim your money back, there is a proper time in which you can claim or sue the person in the court for getting back your money if he is not paying your money. So these if there is any time bearer debt, already your money was taken by somebody and you didn't sue that person within the proper time as per the Limitation Act. Later on, if that person want to return your money, so it is not the money that he is giving you under that transaction. It is simply that he is giving you money as a new transaction or something like that. So if somebody is paying you your time bearer debt, so although it like your like you can say your right to sue that person was gone, but now because he is paying your money to you, so it will be treated as a new contract. And in this case, because you are not paying anything from your side to that person, still this kind of the transaction is valid and no consideration, no contract maxim will not be applicable to this kind of the case also. Then agency, there may be gratuitous agents and non-gratuitous agents. Like gratuitous agent is a person who is doing the service for his principal without charging any amount for his service or any money or anything. So if the gratuitous agent is doing any duty for his principal, so in that case still no consideration, no contract kind of maxim will not be applicable, because gratuitous agent is providing his service as per his own will to his principal. Completed gifts, if somebody is giving any gift to the other person, so again it is very much valid, no consideration, no contract maxim will not be applicable to the completed gifts. Similarly, charitable subscription, If somebody is donating something in the form of the money or any kind of the accessories or anything else like property or something like that, so in this case, because it is charity, one person is doing for the other person, so these kind of the transactions again are valid, and the maxim no consideration no contract is not applicable to these kind of the transactions even. Moving further, capacity of contract, as I told you earlier also, these three kind of the people are not capable to do the contract. If a person is minor, not below the 18 years of age, or in case if the court has appointed the guardian for any person, in that case the minority age is up to 21 years. So in that case, the person who is not who has not attained the age of 21 years will be called as a minor, and he is not able to do the contract, he is not competent to do the contract. One important thing related to minor is that minors are not responsible for any kind of the contracts, but if they are the beneficiary under that contract, so they always have the right to claim for that benefit. So they are not responsible for anything, but if there is any interest that belongs to the minor, so minor can claim that interest, or can claim that money, or claim that particular thing. So this is all about the minor. The person of unsound mind, again they are incompetent to do the contract, they cannot come in to do any kind of the contract. There may be the people, those who are disqualified by the court, like alien, enemy, or any person who is very special or has got any particular kind of the designation from the Indian government. So the foreign ambassadors, they come into this category, so they are not compelled to come into the Indian courts, and that's why they are not capable to do the contract as per the Indian Contract Act. Moving further, free consent. As I told you, like if the agreement is there in between the parties, so the both of the parties should agree to the same thing in the same sense. It is called as free consent. If there is any contract which is not as per the free consent, so that is not a valid contract. Consent is said to be free when it is not caused by coercion, undue influence, fraud, misrepresentation, and mistake. All these are the 5 important elements based on which the contract can become voidable. Let us understand what is called as voidable. When we talk about voidable means at the option of the one party when the contract becomes void, that is called as the voidable contract. So these are the 5 important elements based on which somebody can say that the agreement is not based on the free consent. It is caused by coercion, undue influence, either fraud, misrepresentation, or mistake. So in your exam, the question may come like as this also, both of the parties agree to the same thing in the same sense. Do you agree? So that means that they are asking to you about the free consent. So when we talk about the free consent, there are 5 elements based on which we can say that the consent was not free. Consent is not free. Number 1 is coercion. What is coercion? Coercion is the committing or threatening to commit any act forbidden by the Indian Penal Code, or you can say the unlawful detaining or threatening to detain any property to the prejudice of any person with the intention of causing any person to enter into an agreement. So this may be called as coercion. For example, X give threat to B that transfer your property in my name, otherwise I will kill you. So this is called as coercion. In Hindi we can say coercion as dhamki dena. So based on which we can say that the consent is not free. It has come because of the coercion. Later on, if the agreed party, agreed means pidit, if the agreed parties like proves into the court that he took my signature on that paper, or he got my this thing based on coercion, so on his proofs, or if it will be proved into the court, the contract will become void, and these kind of the contracts are called as the voidable contracts. So there is a direct connection in between the free consent and the voidable contracts. The second important factor that comes under free consent and the voidable contracts is the undue influence. Undue influence may be defined as where the relations subsisting between the parties are such that one of the party is in a position to dominate the will of the other and uses that position to obtain an unfair advantage of the other. So that may be called as the undue influence. For example, it may be taken as the relation between the parties is like that one party may influence the will of the other party, will or one party is in the position to dominate the will of the other party, and like a person may have the real authority on the other person or may have the apparent authority on the other person. There is a relationship of trust in between both of the parties, and one party is in a condition to put a pressure, mental pressure on the other party. So all these kind of the important elements constitutes undue influence. For example, a doctor is deemed to be in a position to dominate the will of the patient, so he may just dominate the will of the patient to go for an operation, and because of the undue influence the patient may agree to this kind of the operation even if it was not into the favor of that patient. So these kind of the you can say the arrangements or like the kind of the agreements, they may be taken as like it was not constituted because of the free consent. There was an undue influence that was exerted or put on by one party on the other party. Similarly, father compels son just to go for any particular kind of degree or kind of the transaction. So again that kind of the transaction may come under the undue influence. Then the third important factor that comes under the free consent is called as the fraud. When we talk about fraud, fraud means and includes any acts committed by a party to a contract with the intention to deceive the other party or to induce the other party to enter into a contract. For example, giving any suggestion to a fact to the other party which the first party already knows that it is not true, active concealment of a fact, promise made with the other party or to perform with the intention of not performing it, or any other act to deceive the other party. So these all kind of the acts comes under the fraud. Then the next is misrepresentation. When a person asserts something which is not true though he believes it to be true, his assertion amounts to misrepresentation. Misrepresentation may be either innocent or without reasonable ground. Then there may be mistake. Mistake may be taken as like do some if somebody has done something but that was incorrect. Mistake may be of two types: mistake of fact or mistake of law. So if there is any kind of the mistake related to the existence of the subject matter, identity of the subject matter, quantity of the subject matter, price of the subject matter, that may be called as a mistake of the fact. But if it is a mistake of law, that means if somebody has ignored any law, he says that I was not so well versed with that particular law and that's why I violated the rules. So this is not acceptable because there is one maxim that says that ignorantia juris non excusa. For ignorance of law there is no excuse. So for mistake of law, as per our Indian Contract Act 1872, there is no excuse. Everybody has to follow all the laws with full sincerity. They cannot neglect that. So these are the 4-5 elements that constitutes free consent. The consent should be free. It should not be caused by all these 5 elements like coercion, undue influence, fraud, misrepresentation and mistake. Then comes quasi-contract. It is a situation in which law imposes upon one person on the ground of the natural justice an obligation similar to that which arises from a true contract. It says that there was no contract in between the party, but still the contract now has come because of some situation or some kind of the circumstances. It is this kind of the contract, it is based on one of the maxim. It says that no one can enrich himself at the expense of the another person. When we talk about the quasi contracts, it is covered by section 68 to section 72 of the Indian Contract Act. Claim for necessary supply to a person incapable of contracting on his account, that is section 68. A supplies B, a lunatic, with some kind of the food, water and shelter. So A has all the rights to recover the money from the property of B. So this is first kind of the quasi contract. The second contract under quasi contract is reimbursement of person paying money due by another in payment of which he is interested. B, for example, B holds land in Bengal. B के पास एक बंगाल में land थी on a lease granted by A. The zamidar was under the requirement to pay the revenue to the government. He didn't pay the revenue to the government from so many years, and as such, as a result, the government declared that they will just seize the property of Mr. A, the zamidar. and just to save the zamidar, just to save the land of Mr. A, B gave the money, the area money of the government to the government. In this case, later on, once the like Mr. B can reclaim his money back from Mr. A. So these kind of the reimbursements are always possible, and again this is also one kind of the quasi contract, reimbursement of person paying money due by another in payment of which he is interested. Then the next third is obligation of a person enjoying benefits of non-gratuitous act. Non-gratuitous act means somebody is doing any service for you but it is not free of cost. He is expecting some kind of the salary or some kind of the award for that service. So these acts are called as the non-gratuitous acts. So it is the obligation of all the people, if they have enjoyed any non-gratuitous act, so they should just pay for that. For example, a tradesman leaves goods at B's house by mistake, and B enjoys all that goods. Now it is the responsibility of B to pay for all that goods to Mr. A. Then responsibility of finder of goods, it again says that if a person if a person finds any goods or that belongs to the other person, so he becomes the finder of the lost goods, and it is the duty of that finder of lost goods to to return all that goods to the actual owner of that goods. So this is again one of the kind of the quasi contract. Although there was no contract, they were strangers, there was no contract in between the parties, but now because he has taken the goods into, the finder has taken the goods into his custody, he is under an obligation just to return all the goods to the actual owner of that goods. So this is also one kind of the quasi contract. Liability of a person to whom money is paid or thing delivered by mistake or under coercion, like if by mistake, for example, A and B jointly owe rupees 1000 to C, A alone pays the amount to C, B not knowing the fact pays rupees 1000 over again to C. Now C is bound to repay the amount to B. So these are the 5 transactions: 68, 69, 70, 71 and 72. All these 5 sections cover the 5 kinds of the quasi contracts. There was no contract in between the parties actually, but still because of some circumstance or situation the contract took place, and now like it is a kind of the implied contract in between the parties, like it is based on the grounds of the natural justice. So these kind of the contracts are called as the quasi contracts. Now one more important kind of the special contract that becomes a part of the Indian Contract Act is the contract of indemnity and contract of guarantee. Contract of indemnity may be defined as a contract in which one party promises to the other party that in case of any loss, if you will bear any loss, I will indemnify your loss. So these kind of the contracts are called as the contract of the indemnity. In case of contract of guarantee, one person give the guarantee to the other person that if he will not pay your money back to you, I will pay on his behalf. So these kind of the contracts are called as contract of guarantee. Now both of these contracts seems like they are equal to each other. There is no difference. Both of them seems to be of the equal meaning, but there are certain differences in between these kind of the contracts, and let us have an explanation. Let us just understand the differences in between these two kind of the contracts. Number one is parties. In case of contract of indemnity, there are only two parties, indemnifier and indemnified. Indemnifier is a person to whom the other person has promised कि in case तुम्हारा loss हुआ तो मैं पूरा करूँगा. तो that is called as the जिसको promise किया गया है वो indemnifier है, और जो promise करता है कि मैं तुम्हारा loss पूरा करूँगा, that person may be called as indemnified. But in case of contract of guarantee, there are three parties: the principal, debtor and creditor, and the surety. Debtor, who has taken money, who has taken loan; creditor, who has given money; and the surety, who has given the guarantee. So in the case of the contract of guarantee, there are three parties. Liability. In contract of indemnity, if there is any loss that happens, in that case the liability of the indemnifier is primary. Like जिसको उसने promise किया था कि मैं, indemnifier is a person who promises that I will pay your loss. So that person has a primary responsibility. But in case of contract of guarantee, the surety liability is secondary. The first liability is of the principal debtor. He has to give back the money of the creditor. But if he will not pay the money within the due time, then only the surety will come into the picture and he will pay the money on behalf of principal debtor. So in case of the contract of guarantee, the liability of the surety is secondary. Request. In the case of the contract of indemnity, there is no kind of the request in between the indemnifier and the indemnity holder or indemnified. But in case of the contract of guarantee, it is the debtor who always requests to surety ki please become my guarantor, please become my surety for this transaction. So that's why the element of request is not there in the case of the contract of indemnity, but it is there in the case of the contract of the guarantee. Existing debt or duty. In case of guarantee, there is always an existing debt or duty for which the surety gives the guarantee. But in case of contract of indemnity, there is no existing debt or duty. It is always based on some contingency, that if there would be any loss that would be happening in future or something like that, then the indemnifier will indemnify the loss, will reimburse the loss of the person to whom that loss has been caused. Claim. The surety on the payment of the debt on behalf of the principal debtor is entitled to proceed against the principal debtor after he has paid the money to the creditor. But in the case of the contract of indemnity, the indemnifier cannot sue the third parties in his own name. He must sue only in the name of the indemnified. So these all are the differences in between the contract of indemnity and contract of guarantee. And at last, contract of bailment. This is also one kind of the special contract. In the contract of the bailment, there are two parties, bailer and bailee. Like if somebody gives some of his goods to any other person with some purpose, so that kind of the transactions, that kind of the agreements are called as the contract of bailment. For example, you purchased a cloth and you give that cloth to the tailor for stitching a shirt for you. So this is a contract of a bailment. The person who gives his goods to some other party for some purpose, that person is called as a bailer. And the person who receives that good to do something on that particular goods, or to do some, to provide, to just use his skill on that particular good, so that person may be called as a bailee. In our case, like if I am giving my goods to tailor for stitching the shirt, so I am a bailer, and the person to whom I have given that tailor will be called as a bailee. So contract of bailment again is very important. Indian Contract Act, when we talk about, there are lot many contracts which are covered by this act. So for all that detailed discussions on all that kind of the contracts, you may refer my notes, and I believe this lecture will be helpful to you to understand the basics related with the Indian Contract Act. And all the best. Thank you.